Hello and welcome to episode 5. So, you found the house you want to buy in Spain, but now what? This episode will cover everything you need to know about the buying process. So we discussed the search process and surveys in the last episode, meaning today our focus is things like preliminary contracts, mortgages, notaries, taxes, all the crucial stuff that can sometimes seem a bit intimidating and a bit confusing. So, to guide us through, I'd like to welcome back Alex Radford from My Lawyer Spain and a big welcome to Sean Woolley from Cloud9 Estate Agents. Guys, thank you so much for being here today.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, yeah.
I feel like we're going to learn loads yet again. This has just been an amazing series so far. So if we begin with just finding out a little bit more about you, Sean, why don't you go first? What is your background at Cloud9 and what do you do to support home buyers in their process?
Okay, we've been here for around 20 years. I came over here with the stupid idea of semi-retiring, and I had, didn't have enough money and had far too much time on my hands, so ended up falling into real estate really. But I'm a lawyer by background, and then a management consultant. Sold out, escaped to Spain, and haven't looked back. I've loved every minute of it. It's not perfect, but what we tried to do when we set up Cloud9 was to offer a sort of boutique service really, because every client is different. And since our inception, we've established a business on the Costa Blanca, Costa Calida, as well as our original base on the Costa del Sol. And we've seen the market develop over the years. And what we try and do is just to hold people's hands through the process. It's not for us about selling a property. It's about finding the right property for a particular client. And then after that's done, I think a lot of agents like to step away and disappear. And, we don't cramp anyone's style, but what we do is say, look, when you need us, we're there. And, we've developed some really nice relationships with clients over the last 2 decades.
And the feedback to me is always that it's a relationship and it really is a bond that you build with your agent. Alex, give us a reminder. What about My Lawyer Spain? What is it that you do and who do you help?
Yeah, so I'm an English solicitor and Spanish lawyer. I grew up in Spain, came back to Spain. Started practicing as a lawyer in 1999 and came back to Spain in 2003. And since then, I've been acting for British and international clients, buying property all over Spain, buying, selling, and inheriting property and doing business in Spain. And recently we were acting for a lot more clients, helping them move to Spain with the residencies and the visas. And we have offices located across the islands and the mainland.
And the last time I spoke to you in this series, we really drilled down on all of that. So if that part of things is of interest, please do revisit the earlier episode because it's been so helpful to really understand residencia and the changes and how much has shifted over the last year. But before we drill down into the details of the buying process, Sean, can you give me a bit of just an overview? What are the steps? What's the order and what's the process after people have maybe found that property that they're like, oh, I think that one's the one?
Okay, I would actually take it a step before that. And I would say if you get all your ducks in a row and prepare yourself to be in a strong position once you've seen that property that you like, then it's going to help you enormously. Because there's nothing worse, and we've probably all done it, there's nothing worse than seeing the car you want, seeing the house you want, and oh, can I afford it? That's always the first thing, isn't it? So what we always say to people is try and get yourself mortgage approved if you do need finance. Try and get everything sorted out so that when you do make an offer on a property, particularly if it's going to be a little cheeky offer and below the market value maybe, then at least we can make it as a strong offer. We can say, look, these guys are mortgage approved, they're ready to go, they can complete in 4-6 weeks. Because that's incredibly strong for a vendor to hear. They're going to take your offer very, very seriously. So if we go back before even coming to look at properties, speak to maybe a mortgage broker, speak to a lawyer if you have any questions about the process and maybe how to structure the purchase so that when you're here, you are in a stronger position than maybe your peers and your competitors when it comes to the buying market. Mm-hmm. And then once you found that property, and hopefully you'll have done your research before you've come and you've spoken to the appropriate parties, then what I always recommend is to make an offer. That's the first thing, obviously. And once the offer is accepted, sometimes it involves a little bit of to and froing and backwards and forwards. Once the offer is agreed, then I always suggest that the matter is handed over to a lawyer. I'm a lawyer by trade. I'm also a real estate agent. I would much rather, if I were putting money with someone, I would much rather give it to a lawyer, particularly like a reservation deposit, the private purchase contract. So I, at that stage, normally hand the process over to the client's lawyer or a lawyer that we help the client choose if they haven't already got one. And that lawyer will then normally arrange with the vendor's lawyer or the developer, whoever's selling the property. They will arrange for the due diligence to take place and a reservation document to be drawn up, and also a reservation deposit to be paid to secure the property. And I always advise my clients that for a property to be taken off the market, if it's something they're really keen on securing and there's other people in the frame, they need to, they really need to have the reservation document signed by both parties, and they need to have a reservation deposit paid for proof of intent, really. And even that not necessarily secures the property, because the first time that can really be done legally is with the private purchase contract, but at least in most 90% of cases, it will secure the property, take it off the market, and allow the lawyer to do their job of the first stage of their job, which is to make sure, obviously, that the property is legal, that it's being built according to local or national guidelines, et cetera, et cetera. So that would be the first kind of step in the journey, really, of buying the property.
Yeah, that makes sense. It is different to the UK, isn't it? Because at the point where you have an offer accepted in the UK, that doesn't mean much. You can get gazumped, yeah. You can still lose it. Whereas, am I right in saying that there's a little bit more security at that point? Like you say, 90% of properties probably from then are safe.
Yeah, exactly. Particularly if you have two lawyers in control at that point, and Alex may back me up on this, is that if you have two decent lawyers who know what they're doing, and one is holding a reservation deposit, a reservation agreement has been signed. What we always have in our reservation agreements is subject to a few things. Number one is that the property is legal, because obviously if the property isn't legal, it doesn't have a building license, for instance, then you want to make sure that reservation deposit, whether it's €6,000 or €3,000, that can come back to you, which is why we always get the lawyer involved to protect the money. But yeah, for me, I've bought and sold properties in both Spain and in England, and the process is so much simpler here. It's so much more secure, because what you're saying is, unless there's any nasties, I want to buy that property. And why would you change your mind? If you're an honourable person, why would you change your mind? Whereas in the UK, you can basically say, I want that property. This is the offer. It's agreed. Great. And then you don't have to do anything for about 6 weeks while the lawyer makes the checks. And then in that time, you can find another property that you like a bit better, or it's just a minefield.
Yeah, totally. Alex, would you agree with that? Is that the same in your estimation?
Yeah, I think it's all about preparation. So source a good real estate agent, talk to them, get their market view on what it's like on the ground, have a look at other properties in the area, get a real good feel for the area, make sure you're happy with that area, and then I'd look for those properties. And then, as Sean was saying, I'd say, yes, if you need a mortgage, then talk to a mortgage broker up front. We're acting for lots of clients, putting in place powers of attorney now. So that's a document that authorises us to act for them. We're applying for their NIEs. I think that it's good to have, we can open a bank account as well with that power of attorney. I think it's good to instruct a lawyer really early on in the process and apply for your NIEs, because when you do put that offer in, you can say, look, I've got my lawyer in place, I've got the power of attorney in place, we can complete quite quickly, especially if you're a cash buyer. So that's a real strong argument. So you put yourself in the place of the seller. If you're saying, look, we could complete fairly quickly, 4 to 8 weeks time, they could jump at your cheeky offer. Whereas if you're still just starting and there's other offers on the table, your offer might not be as attractive.
Yeah, it's about instilling confidence, I suppose, and really showing that you've thought it through. So just to go back, Alex, prior to making the offer, things to have in place would be, a bank account, you mentioned, definitely.
Yeah, so actually, Beth, if we're brutally honest, you probably don't need anything in place beforehand, because, we've had clients come out on holiday and said, well, I've seen a property, I like it, I'm going to offer. And they put an offer in and then they start. So there's nothing wrong with doing that. But of course, if you really want to kind of get ready, then source a good agent, lawyer, mortgage broker, put powers of attorney in place, NIEs, and look at your budget, because depending on where you buy in Spain, the costs vary greatly, and depends whether you buy a brand new property or a second-hand property. So again, a good lawyer will tell you about the costs of that purchase.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. Now, Sean, you mentioned the back and forth with the offer, and sometimes it does go back and forth a few times. So is that the same as what I would associate with the housing market over here that, you know, yes, that's their asking price. You're going to put in an under offer. They're going to negotiate. Do you do that? Do you go back and forth like an agent would in the UK?
We do, absolutely. You know, I don't know if you're familiar with like location, but we do a very similar job to Phil and Kirsty in that, you know, we represent the buyer or the seller, depending on the situation. Rarely both, which is another distinction from the UK market. And we fight hard for our clients, and we will, you know, every vendor has a story to tell. So, you know, you might see a figure that the property's advertised at. And I often get asked by clients, you know, okay, what's the percentage discount I can get from that price? What's the percentage discount I can get in Marbella or Torrox or wherever it might be? And I always say there isn't a rule of thumb, because it very much depends on the vendor, how they've price the property or how they've been advised to price the property, whether it's for a quick sale or whether it's to attract offers, and also the vendor's situation, their personal situation. How much is their mortgage? They're not going to sell for under the mortgage value. You know, how much is how much did they buy it for? When did they buy it? Was it in a slump? Was it in the heights? You know, so what nationality are they? What's their culture? You know, do they haggle? Do they not haggle? Because I think a lot of Brits particularly think, oh, I'm going to come along to Spain, I'm going to offer 20-30% below the asking price on any property I fancy, and I'm going to get one. No, it rarely happens like that. And this is where you have to kind of give in to the experts, unfortunately, and you have to give away a little bit of control and say, look, Mr. Agent or Mrs. Agent, you know, what should I expect to pay for this property? And I'm very honest with clients, and I say, look, expect to pay this, but let's go in at this. But please bear in mind that the price I expect you to get this for is this. And then you're managing expectations and you're not creating any false promises. But there is no rule of thumb. But, you know, we always try and do our very best.
And I can so imagine. Go, Alex.
Sorry, but I was just going to add to that. I mean, absolutely spot on, Sean. And I, as a lawyer, I'm always advising clients when they're talking and touring with agents to ask them why the seller's selling. How long has it been on the market for? Have any offers been accepted or rejected? And if so, why? And just trying to get a lot more intelligence and background information on the sellers, because on that basis, then you can present your offer or consider how much to offer for that property.
Yeah, that's great advice. I sometimes feel like people are quite tentative. They won't get all of the information, or they'll think that they shouldn't ask, or they'll wait too long and then they'll ask later. So I think that's really great advice of just ask the questions. And as we said before, it's a relationship that you're building with your agent, and that they should have those answers and they should provide those answers. Am I right in saying that, Sean?
Absolutely. I mean, we have one client who I know, it's going to sound awful, but he's always sniffing out opportunities, and most opportunities are created by things like death and divorce. There's also opportunities from things like a seller who's maybe committed to another project that they're about to complete in 6 weeks, and they need money, and you know they need money. So that creates an opportunity for somebody buying that particular property. And there's not enough agents, I don't think, who do enough digging about the circumstances behind a vendor's situation. And as Alex said, you know, it's crucial. It's crucial, and it can save a buyer, you know, I don't know, quite a figure.
Yeah.
Just by doing a bit of research and a bit of digging. And
if you accurately proposition your offer, then it will save the back and forth. It will save anyone getting affronted and upset, and it will. I think it's great advice. So if we move on to the preliminary contract, what is it? Why do you have to have one? And at what point does it come into that process? Sean, are you probably best to answer this? And then Alex, feel free to chime in.
I'll probably pass the buck on this in a minute. But what I would say is that the reservation document is the first kind of legal involvement in the process. And what it does is it binds two parties in a fairly loose way. I think maybe Alex would agree, in terms of, you know, it's basically saying, I want to buy that property, I want to sell it. And you know what? Here's some money as a signal of our intent. And what it does do is it buys a little bit of time for both parties, really, to do their due diligence, certainly for the buyer and their lawyer to, as I say, to check the property, to make sure that you're not going to go to the next stage, which is the big commitment, if there's anything nasty that you find to do with the property. But Alex, would you back me up with that?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd add to that is just so people are aware, when they're buying a property, typically an agent will ask them to pay between 3,000 or 6,000 euros to take that property off the market. And there's, you know, as Sean knows, there's thousands of estate agents across Spain, some more reputable than others. And if they can, I'd always recommend that buyers consult with their lawyer with that reservation contract before it's signed. Typically we get called. I'm with the agent now who wants me to sign this. I'll say, look, just ask them to send it over to us by email. We'll have a quick look at it and come back to you. And that happens a lot. But what's really important in that reservation contract, because we can't carry out full due diligence on that when you're just sat with the agent and they're asking for 3,000 to 6,000 euros to take the property off the market. I'm kind of more or less happy with a clause or a few clauses in the contract saying the property's fully legal, it's all registered, it complies with local planning permission, it's not the subject of any breaches of planning permission, and the license of first occupation or the cedula are in place. And typically, if a seller is prepared to sign that contract with that clause in there and anything turned out to be untrue, then we can get the deposit back. So with that clause in there, I'm happy for that reservation contract to be signed. If the people, buyers are applying for a mortgage, then you've got to bear in mind that the buying process may take longer. But by and large, Beth, the buying process in Spain can take anywhere from, say, 2 weeks to 12 weeks. So I think it's very important sometimes to be realistic about how quickly maybe the bank could go around and value the property, or if the buyers wanted a survey, how quickly that survey could be organised. So I typically say from a reservation contract, I'd allow 10 days to maybe 3 weeks, and then you set a date in that contract as well for completion, which again, overall the whole process from start to finish up to 12 weeks. So at that stage, it's really quite important, as we talked about earlier, to have all your ducks in a row and you're ready to commit, because you are committing. And if you sign that contract and you pay a deposit over and then you don't meet the obligations that you signed up to, then you will lose that money.
Yeah.
And equally, the same goes, you pay the reservation contract. After that, you'll be typically asked to pay the balance of 10% in a private purchase contract, and that private purchase contract is much more detailed than the reservation contract. But then you pay a balance of 10% if you pull out there, for example, because you didn't get a mortgage offer and you hadn't conditioned the purchase on a mortgage offer. If the sellers accepted that, then you'd lose that money as well. Yeah. So buyers are going to be very aware of all these issues that when they sign up to the contract, they're committed. Unlike other countries, once you sign up to that contract, paid the money's over, gazumping doesn't usually happen here.
Yeah. So there are benefits and there's kind of good things and bad things about that, basically. So that 3,000 to 6,000, just to clarify, the deposit, is that based on a percentage of anything? Is that based on a percentage of the property? Is it based on it's just a blanket fee regardless of the value of property that you're buying? And who gets to decide whether it's 3,000 or 6,000? I mean, that's quite a it's quite a difference.
Yeah, I mean, again, Beth, depending on the value of the property, it could be 10 or 15,000 euros. So it's just basically, it's a commitment from the buyer saying, I'm serious, I'm putting money down, I want you to take that property off the market.
Fine.
And you take that off the market to carry out your valuation, carry out a survey, carry out your due diligence on the property, and then commit to signing the private purchase contract at a date to be agreed, at which time you pay the balance of the 10%.
Fine, that makes sense. Thank you very much. Okay, talking about mortgages then, because you've mentioned it a few times, Alex. What is the process there? How do you go about getting a mortgage in Spain? Is it straightforward? Is it the same as what I would do in the UK, where you start looking at banks and you probably get a mortgage advisor? Where would you begin?
It is different to the UK and other countries, I'd say, because in Spain, typically when people take out a mortgage, it's a mortgage for life with one lender. So you're not changing every 2 or 3 years. So once you've signed that mortgage, you typically stay with them for forever, and until the mortgage has been paid off. And you pay capital and interest at the same time. So I'd always recommend speaking to an independent mortgage broker. They can get the best deals for you, and it's a similar process to any other country. You've got to prove that you've got sufficient income to pay the mortgage over the term of the debt. And that's it. And again, that's something I would recommend that clients do up front before they come to Spain, before they submit offers. Talk to a mortgage broker, find out how much you can borrow, and when you know how much you can borrow, then go out and tour with agents like Sean, and also let the agent know up front how much your budget is. Don't expect that the prices will come down or you'll be able to negotiate to come down within your range. I'd always suggest have a realistic budget. Bear in mind costs on top of the purchase price could be between 12 and 14%, depending on the type of property you buy and the region in Spain where you buy. So really have a good grasp of your costs, your budget, and have that mortgage offer up front. And you're in a really strong position then to go out and put an offer in for a property.
Yeah, totally. And Sean, do you build those relationships with mortgage advisors? Would you say exactly that's what you would advise? Use an independent broker?
I personally would. I wouldn't. Well, I mean, you can go direct to banks. Some people have their favorite bank in Spain or they've banked with them before. But the problem is that, every person is different. Every bank is different in terms of what they're doing with mortgages at the moment here in Spain, because there have been some changes behind the scenes. So you don't really know. With a mortgage broker, what they're doing is they're opening up the whole market to you. So once a client has discussed their requirements, they might want certain conditions in a mortgage, or they might want to pay it over a certain term. And the broker, once they've heard your circumstances, will then be able to say, okay, that lender's going to be perfect because they've got this product, that lender, maybe not. And what can happen is you can go to the wrong lender. If you're trying to do it all yourself, you can end up going to the wrong bank, spending 2 or 3 weeks backwards and forwards with paperwork. And then you've kind of wasted time and wasted an application when, okay, it's going to cost you probably a little bit, a fee for a mortgage advisor to help you. But I think you'll probably save in the long run by getting a good product that's right for you. So that's why I would certainly recommend that as well.
Totally. And if it is a mortgage for life, I'm just this is me just filling in gaps in my knowledge. Is it not a fixed rate, or is a fixed rate for a certain period of time? Are 2-year fixes and 5-year fixes still a thing if you're with a lender for life?
So let me just clarify then. So when I said mortgage for life, it's because it could be a long time, but typically you can go up to 30 years, Beth, for a mortgage. Always capital repayment plus interest. And you can go fixed or you can go variable. Okay. And it follows the Euro-Ebor rate, which is actually in negative territory at the moment. So I'm acting for clients at the moment. They've gone to they went to the bank themselves. And they have been offered Euro-Ebor plus 1.8%. But however, if they take out certain products with the bank, that interest rate comes down. So if they take out insurance for the house, it comes down. If they get their salary paid into the bank account, that comes down.
Interesting.
And if they take out a pension with the bank as well, it also comes down. And if they take out a card and spend €1,000 a month, it comes down. It ends up coming down by about 1%.
Wow.
So actually, they're talking about Euro-Ebor, which is negative territory at the moment, minus 5%. So it comes down to Euro-Ebor plus 0.8. Is actually they're going to end up paying 0.3% for their mortgage. It's fixed for the first year at 1.5%, but then Euro-Ebor plus 0.8. I think it's a fantastic deal.
Yeah, that's so interesting. It's building loyalty, and it actually makes loads of sense. That's really, really interesting. Okay, good.
I have a similar arrangement with my bank, actually, with my own personal mortgage. I have a similar thing, because I do a lot of business and personal banking with them. The rate I'm paying is incredibly low. And what I would add to what Alex has so eloquently said is that, I think there's never been a better time to get a Spanish mortgage, actually, because rates are low. There's been changes behind the scenes in terms of what costs buyers are now liable to pay. The banks have taken on a lot of that extra cost. So I think it's a great time to get a mortgage. The only drawback, and this is true for some investors who are used to buying, particularly if it's a second or third home, they're used to paying interest-only mortgages because it helps with their cash flow. We don't have that really here in Spain. As Alex said, it's capital plus interest repayments. So although your monthly fees are maybe a little higher, it does mean that you're paying off the thing, which always helps. And the Spanish don't get it. The Spanish don't understand the concept of interest only. You'll go into a bank and say, "Can I have an interest only mortgage, please?" And they'll be like, "What? You don't want to pay anything off the capital? What are you doing?" And it's just not something in their psyche.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Okay, contract of sale. So let's assume we've got everything agreed, we've got the mortgage in place. What is the contract of sale, Alex? And who do you need? Am I right in saying you need a notary in place?
No. So in effect, you've signed the reservation contract, you're committed to buying that property, and the next step is we carry out our due diligence, assuming we're happy with the purchase, the property documents, and the buyer's happy with, say, the valuation or mortgage if they've arranged that, or they're happy with our legal report, which we send to them. The next step would be signing the contract, and in effect, that is a contract in which we set out the terms of the agreement. We state who the parties are, property being purchased, whether any furniture is included or not, and if so, what. And then we would set a date for completion. And you'd sign the contract, pay the balance of the 10%, and then we don't need a notary to sign that. We sign it now, usually by email. So if we've got a power of attorney, I'd send the contract through to the clients. They say, yeah, happy with that contract. Authorize you to sign up, authorize you to pay the balance of 10% to the sellers. I would then do that, and then we've exchanged contracts formally, and then we start preparing for completion, which is before the notary. And
interesting. Okay.
In effect, we then send usually a copy of the contract and all the buyers and sellers' details and the property details to the notary, who will prepare the deed of purchase.
And that's when it all gets very exciting. Just actually to pick up on something you said there, I remember recording a podcast with someone who was shocked and amazed that when they walked into the property they bought, all of the furniture was still there, everything. They hadn't realised that at all. They thought they were buying an empty property, which is probably what you would expect in the UK. So just tell me again, what is it? That would be in the contract then, that we're leaving all of our stuff?
Yeah, so it's very important. I think if you want the furniture, then we specify what items you want. If you don't want any furniture and you want it empty, then again, we've got to specify that. So the clients we're acting for at the moment, they're buying a house which needs some reform. However, that house has got a lot of junk in it, and we've asked the sellers to remove it before it's sold, and they've said no, they wouldn't do that. But thankfully, the agents have stepped in and they've said they would do that. Which is a great compromise. So, yeah, I think it's very important. If you want the furniture, state which items, and if you want it empty, state that too.
I can just imagine it would be a bit of a shock. It was a very funny recording. I could empathise with him. But Sean, I wanted to ask, both of you actually, but we'll start with Sean. How much are translators used in your line of work and in this whole process? You guys are both obviously English, but you don't only deal with English clients. So how does the language barrier work for you day to day?
This is where, again, multilingual lawyers will come into play, and they will help a client translate certain documents from Spanish to English. And depending on the relationship that a client has with a lawyer, will dictate whether they're happy with that service. A lawyer just running through the contract, explaining the different terms, or whether they need to professionally outsource that to a third party. Most things are handled in-house. I rarely get involved in transactions where a translator is required, because they're happy with the service that the lawyer is providing. So if you have a Swedish person and only wants to deal with a Swedish lawyer, then that makes complete sense, because it means they can talk through the contract in their own language. But it varies again from client to client, but 90% of the time it's all dealt with in-house.
And Alex, is it a great selling point for you that you are multilingual and do clients love that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'm an English solicitor, I'm a Spanish lawyer, bilingual in Spanish. All the staff in the office speak English and Spanish, and then other languages. We prepare the contract in double column in English and Spanish. We apply for land searches from the land registry in English and Spanish, which I think is amazing. The deed of purchase, when you go to the notary, if we're using power of attorney, then of course we would require a translation of that. But if clients come to Spain, then we would go along to the notary with them, and there would be someone from our team, wherever they're located in Spain, to go along to the notary with them and translate that deed for them. And if they can't make it over to Spain, then before or after completion, we would go through the deed with them, saying that this is the property. But by and large, because we've done all our homework before, Beth, we've sent them our legal report. We've said this is the property you're buying. This is the land search in English. These are the utility bills. These are the community costs, etc. etc. We've sent our legal report to them. They're happy with that. They're just then happy for us to complete the purchase, usually with the power of attorney. So translators, we barely use translators unless there is, say, someone on the other side with who speaks a language we don't. But usually, I'd say actually English and Spanish and the Norwegian language, the Scandinavian languages, very commonly used here on the Costa del Sol.
Yeah, that's absolutely what I've seen in guests on the podcast as well. So it's an interesting one. What about power of attorney then? Let's talk a little bit more about this because you've brought it up a few times. Who are the best people to use that service? What is it, and when is it used?
This is a very important document, Beth. So power of attorney, you sign before a notary. You can either sign that in Spain or you can sign it in your home country. And that you're granting someone the power to buy a property for you, to open a bank account, to sign a mortgage, apply for NIAs, set up direct debits. So there's huge responsibilities there. So I'd recommend that you only give that power of attorney to an independent lawyer who is acting for you. It's a trusted advisor. And before you even get to that stage, if we go back to what we're talking about, the research first, you've contacted your lawyer, they've sent you terms of business, they've set out what they're going to do for you, they've confirmed the costs, and in there should be the power of attorney. So as I said, we get the power of attorney, we typically apply for the NIE numbers, we open a bank account. If clients are applying for a mortgage, we would only open a bank account when they found the mortgage with the bank, their chosen bank, and we would open the bank account with their chosen bank. But that power of attorney would basically sit in the file, waiting for the client to find a property. So we're signing lots of powers of attorney up front when clients haven't even found a property.
Right, interesting.
As we talked about earlier, it's a good thing to do to have that power of attorney in place.
Does it mean, how much of this can be done remotely? Presumably it means you could be doing viewings and choose your house and everything remotely, but do you need to be in person to sign over the power of attorney?
No, the power of attorney can be signed. If clients are in Spain, then we can take them to the local notary and they can sign them here. But if not, we send a copy of the power of attorney by email to them or by post. They take it along to the local notary in their home country. They sign it before the notary. That then has to be stamped by the notary, stamped also with the apostille of The Hague, and then sent back to us. And then we can buy the property for them. So in effect, they don't have to come to Spain to do anything. Once they've found a lawyer, they give them the power of attorney. They can buy a house remotely now. They don't even have to go on a plane to buy a house now, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. Sean, how common is that? How common are you seeing these remote viewings, but also remote purchases?
Yeah, in the last 12 months, so pretty much the extent of our European lockdown, 50% of our transactions have been without the client present.
Wow.
And what we're finding is that clients now, we've noticed there's not been any drop-off rate in terms of inquiry levels. So we're still getting a huge amount of interest from pretty much all over the world, but particularly from Europe. And I think people now have reached a point where they want to move on with their lives and they're kind of fed up of waiting. And I think what's happened is with the use of technology, with the use of Zoom and video viewings and WhatsApp viewings, we can offer pretty much as good an experience as you can possibly get without being here physically. So, you can have tours of the properties that you like the look of. We can do that multiple times. And what's happening now is that the clients that are coming to us here on the ground are at a much more advanced stage of the process because we've already done first viewings. We've already done that by remote means. So when they come to us now, rather than starting off their search, they're actually halfway through. And what we end up doing is showing them maybe a second selection, so a short list of properties for them to decide upon. So our conversion rate in terms of people here on the ground buying properties has doubled.
Yeah.
So it's a different dynamic for us as agents. We're having to work in different ways to satisfy client demands. But clients now who come to us are extremely well researched and they're definitely further along the purchase journey. And as Alex said, what we try and encourage them to do is to alongside that, do all the other stuff, the ancillary stuff like the mortgage, getting the mortgage kind of prepared, speaking to a lawyer, the power of attorney is something that, we tend to do when they're physically here, because it's just much easier than trying to do it remotely. Although, with some clients, we're conscious that it might sound a bit salesy, while he's speaking to the lawyer, get him to do a power of attorney. It sounds a bit cheesy and a bit rushed, but actually it can save a huge amount of time, and it's really beneficial to do. Even if you don't find a property that trip, it's something that the lawyer can use maybe in 3 or 6 months' time, and it saves you having to go to the notary in your home country and getting it apostilled. So there are time advantages just doing that, even if the sounds a bit corny in suggesting it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. It makes absolute sense. I think it's so interesting what's happened. Just our reliance on technology, but also the possibilities now for viewings. I've seen agents do video tours, and they're fantastic. And you really get a feel for a property.
I mean, we've sold a villa in one of the most exclusive addresses in the whole of Europe for 2.75 million, and the client never saw it.
Wow. Wowza, that is incredible. Can I ask where the most exclusive address in all of Europe is, or is that too much information?
In La Zagaleta.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. So, okay, you mentioned money there. I'm sure we're not always talking that level of money, but let's talk about fees and the charges that people should expect to pay, because I know that it comes up when I speak to buyers that there's a charge at the end that you need to really keep in mind, and you really need to factor into your budget. So, Sean, just explain what that is, and are there other fees that people need to be taking into account?
Well, there are purchase costs. So the purchase costs, it depends on what type of property you're buying. And as Alex said, depends on whereabouts in Spain, because they differ slightly. But traditionally, certainly here on the Costa del Sol, for a resale property, so one that's been pre-owned, you're talking about transfer tax, which for the first 400,000 euros of the price is 8%. For between 400 and 700,000, that portion is charged at 9%, and anything above 700,000 is charged at 10%. So it's a little bit cheaper than buying from a developer who will charge you a direct, like our VAT back in the UK. So it's EVA of 10% on the whole amount. Alongside that, you also have obviously the legal fees, which I'll let Alex explain, and the appropriate charges there. On new developments, you also have stamp duty to pay. And you have also the notary fees, land registry fees for registering the title deed. And then there are some costs normally associated with mortgage in terms of getting them brokered and arranged and stuff like that. But a lot of those fees have actually gone by the wayside. And Alex is absolutely right in terms of what you should expect to pay, because some of those fees are variable, like the notary fees and registry fees. It depends on, bizarrely, how many pages are in the deeds and which notary and stuff like that. So we always kind of try and join them together so people, their heads don't fall off and they can appreciate just a global figure. And we always estimate sort of between 12 and 14%, depending on the type of property, whether you need a mortgage, all those sorts of things.
Okay, that's really helpful. And Alex, the legal fees then?
Legal fees, Beth, are always reasonable.
Always
reasonable. Typically 1% of the purchase price plus VAT at 21%, with usually a minimum of about 1,500 euros plus EVA, and that's got to include carrying out the purchase, putting in place the power of attorney for you, and then as Sean mentioned, you've got the notary fees, land registries. You've got NIE fees on top of that, survey valuation fees. But 12-14% you should have change out of that. But Beth, remember, Spain's 17 autonomous regions. Each region has their own transfer taxes. Mm-hmm. So as Sean mentioned, Andalusia region, 8, 9, 10%. Go into Murcia, that's 8%. Go into the Valencian region, it starts at 10%. Canaries starts at 6.5%, and the Balearics 8% upwards. So it depends on the region you buy in. The costs vary. So it's important, again, as part of your homework to find out exactly what the costs are in the area you're buying in.
Yeah, totally. That makes sense. And would you say that it is down to the buyer doing their homework? How much of this is spoon-fed to them? How much of this do you run through? Do you say, okay, great, you found that house, you need to remember 12 to 14%? Or is it something that kind of comes, because I know that I've spoken to people who felt at the end like, oh God, we totally forgot, and actually that's a chunk of cash. That's not an insignificant amount of money.
I'd say that buyers are coming to us now a lot more informed and readied and prepared. So they know about the purchase costs. There's a lot of webinars, online videos on YouTube, people can, preparing for property purchase. There's a lot of homework they can do, and they are doing, because lots of people have spent a lot of time at home in front of their screens, doing not much, So the buyers we're coming across are well informed. They're ready. They want to put the power of attorney in place. They want to get the NIs. They want to open a bank account, so they're ready. And then it's over to the agent to find them the property. So,
yeah, that makes sense. Sean, you were going to say something.
Yeah, no, I mean, we as a matter of course, as a matter of our kind of training, whenever we're speaking to clients on the phone or communicating via email, one of the first things we do is we send them a guide as to how to buy a property in Spain. Obviously, that includes all the purchase costs and the running costs of properties. We also have a suite of videos on YouTube where we explain kind of every element of the purchase and the ownership journey. So things like community fees and all sorts of things. But I'm still always amazed, and it doesn't matter what level of budget we're talking, I'm always amazed that, you talk about it in the car with people when you're out on tour, and then we get to the signing, the reservation form, and it's like, oh, you've never told me about the transfer tax, and you never told me the legal fees were going to be. And you're like, oh, we did. We told you about 4 times, actually. I don't know whether it's just in one ear, out the other. I don't honestly know, but I always have a little giggle about it, because I think, no, we definitely did discuss this.
We've told you at every stage. I think sometimes probably the excitement, right, of a dream property and just really making the dream come true, and then, the fees, but it's going to be worth it.
Yeah, we don't want to hit the nasty bits.
Yeah, exactly. Well, lastly, speaking of the nasty bits, I want to talk about the tax. I want to talk about the joyous thing of tax, capital gains tax specifically. Is there anything to consider here for people? Is there anything that comes up? Sean, do you want to go first?
No. Alex, I'm handing this one over.
Spoken like a true agent, eh?
Yeah, exactly. Over to the lawyer. I mean, to be fair, it's a matter that we obviously know about. We're aware of the stuff going on, but I wouldn't want to sort of misplace my position on this. So I'd rather Alex handle it first.
Sure.
So actually, Beth, it's nothing really to worry about too much. If you made a gain in Spain on your property when you come to sell, then you're going to pay tax at 19%. Okay, so all the costs of purchase, all the costs of sale are deductible, and then when you sell your property, the buyer's lawyer is obliged to hold back 3% of the purchase price, and they pay that to the Spanish tax office on account of your capital gains tax calculation, and then you've got 4 months to submit the final declaration and pay any balance. If you've made a loss, or you haven't made a gain, then that 3% you can claim back. Okay, and then so that's capital gains taxes. And if you're a resident, then you can roll over the gains. If you're over the age of 65, it's your main residence, and you've been a resident here for more than 3 years, then you don't pay any capital gains tax. So each individual person's tax circumstances are different, and depends whether you are a resident or not resident. And then on an annual basis, once you own a property in Spain, if you purchased it in individual names, so as opposed to say a company structure or something, then you would pay what's known as non-residence income taxes, and that starts the year after purchase, and that's it's a few hundred euros based on the kind of the taxable value of the property, and you submit that before the 31st of December each year. The first year you'll just pay. Say you completed in August, you pay from August to December, and you've got to pay that the following year before the end of December.
Right.
And again, that's a small tax, non-residence income tax. If you rent out the property, then you've also got an obligation to declare that income in Spain, pay that tax here. That tax, the net amount that you earn is taxed depending on what nationality you are, whether European or non-European, ranges between 19 and 24%. And if you're a non-European, as Brits are now, then you pay the 24%, and also the costs of renting, such as water, electric, management costs, marketing costs, cleaning, those aren't deductible expenses.
Right.
Okay. So that's kind of a little bit of a nasty hangover from Brexit.
Yeah.
But again, nothing to put anyone off buying a property.
Just things to factor in. I think it's just an awareness, isn't it? It's just. Yeah. I think I'm right in saying that's the same in the UK, although don't quote me on it, that it's not deductible. The costs that you would spend to have your rental property up to scratch for tenants isn't deductible. So that's not entirely different, but the percentage is definitely different. 24% is higher. Okay, my final question is, with all of those things, what about the exchange rate? Is there anything you can do to stop yourself getting clobbered by the exchange rate or to maximise on that? How do you advise people when they're thinking about all of this? Because, I mean, obviously, if you're in a country that has the euro anyway, it's different. But if you are taking into account this exchange rate, what's the best route around that?
I would strongly advise my clients to speak to a specialist foreign exchange provider, because very often they will beat the rates that you're being quoted by your bank, who you may have an allegiance to. But look, it's not their core business. So you're far better off going to, and there's several of them, you're far better off going to a specialist provider who can get you the best rates possible. And there's various options. You can either exchange on the spot, or you can forward buy, so that when the currency hits a certain rate, you deal. And of course, nobody knows where the exchange rates are heading. It's been volatile now for several years, actually. But even in the last 3 months, the exchange rate has gone in the Brits' favour if they're buying overseas of 10%. I think it's the exchange rates have gone from like 105 to 115 or 110 or something like that. That can translate, a 10% saving on a property effectively.
Yeah.
That's a huge amount. And, it's been said for a long time, while sterling was very low against the euro following Brexit and God knows what, it was actually a great time for European buyers to buy from British vendors in Spain, because Brits were actually taking more back to the UK because they were making the exchange rate, and then people were benefiting. So, there's different scenarios for different deals that might just translate into a great deal for someone.
Interesting, really interesting. Alex, do you have anything to add there?
No, I agree with that. Definitely use a foreign currency company to help. So, as soon as you've signed the contract, or even beforehand, to be honest, I'd be speaking to a currency company, getting an idea of how they operate. When you, for example, we asked for a small amount up front to kind of put the power of attorney in place. So I would suggest using a currency company to transfer that amount to us, so people can see how it works. And then what's really important is that they keep in touch with the currency company, so they know the currency company is aware of the stages of the process. So now you're paying 3,000 to 6,000 euros, and I'd always recommend that's paid via a currency company, so that money would come over. So how it works is they set up an account with a currency company. Typically, they would then transfer. They'd ask them for a euro rate. They transfer the sterling equivalent into the currency company's account in their home country, and then it would say come out to the lawyer's client's account or the estate agent's account, and that's how it works. So it's very important to stay in touch with the currency company at each stage of the transaction. So I know we had a long delay recently between one client buying, because they had to exchange in the UK house, and there was a delay of 3 months, and they didn't keep up in touch with the currency company, and the rate went down during that period, which put them in a little bit of a difficult position. So I'd say, really, once you've agreed to buy the property, I would convert the euros. But obviously talk to the specialist company, because the rate might be going up. And I remember sat on the wire with a client who basically needed it to go up by 0.5%. Or half a pip, as they call it, from say 1.15 to 1.6 to 15.5, so he could buy the property he wanted. And we went on like that for about 3-4 weeks. So it's important to plan that up front. And the other thing is, if you're selling, if it's if a British person is selling to a British person, we can actually agree the price in pounds and agree a rate up front. And 80% of that purchase price can be paid in sterling in the UK by bank transfer, and the rest usually has to be paid in Spain, because we've got to maybe take care of debt or settle a mortgage, pay estate agent fees, etc. So that's another option, but that again is something to discuss with an agent up front. If you're buying from a European or a Spaniard, of course you can't do that. But if you are buying from a Brit, then that is an option. You can fix the exchange rate and the sterling rate at the time of purchase.
Excellent. Well, that's great. That's a very comprehensive reply. Thank you. Now, is there anything that I have missed? We've come to the end, and I just wanted to ask, do you think there's anything glaring that I've not included? I feel like we have covered so much and there's so much information in there.
I think two things from my point of view really is that I think it's the way to look at it from a buyer's perspective is to imagine it's a team of people working for you. You need a good lawyer, you need a good agent, you then need a good mortgage advisor if you're wanting a mortgage, and you need a good foreign exchange provider. Those four people should be able to smooth this process along quite nicely for you. But it's about choosing the right people that you trust, that you can liaise with easily. And that if you, by doing that and treating it as like a team effort, you won't go too wrong. And then the second thing I was going to say is that I think for British people particularly, they need to realise that Spain is an international market. A lot of people are saying to us, a lot of British clients are saying to us, oh, well, because of Brexit, there's not going to be many people in the market buying, and the prices will come down. We're seeing exactly the opposite. We just enjoyed our record quarter in 20 years in terms of revenues and transactions. And of the last 22 deals that we helped along, 18 of those, 18 were from different countries. There were 18 different nationalities of buyers involved.
Wow. Okay, yeah.
So it shows that Spain is a truly international market. And I think with the advent of COVID, people now who can work from home, looking for a change of lifestyle, maybe a change of pace, they're coming to Spain because they realise what a great place it is from a lifestyle point of view, but they're coming from all over the place. And I think sometimes we Brits can get a bit obsessed with ourselves and think, well, we're the only ones here, we're the only ones that matter. Those days are gone. It's a multinational market, and British people aren't in control of it anymore. So yes, there might be slightly fewer Brits on the horizon, but it doesn't mean to say that prices are going to drop.
Totally. Interesting. And Alex?
Yeah, I'd add to that in that basically we provide a comprehensive service from start to finish. So putting in place the power of attorney, applying for the tax number, the NIEs, completing the purchase of the property, registering the property in the client's names. We can set up direct debits for water, electric, community fees, internet, etc. After completion, put in place home and contents insurance. And then if they're a non-resident, we can then complete their non-residents' income taxes. So in effect, all they have to do is basically find the property and then come along to us, and we can do that comprehensive service, as can many other lawyers. But obviously, I'd say choose a lawyer who specialises in property purchases across the country. And then, we haven't talked about the kind of the nastiest thing is you come out, you enjoy your house. Anything can happen. So I'd recommend a Spanish will. Have a Spanish will put in place, a Spanish will for Spanish assets, and then a will in your home country, and make sure they work together. So if you update your home country will, usually the first clause of that will is I revoke all former wills. So just let your lawyer in your home country know that you've got a Spanish will in place already, signed before a notary here in Spain or before a notary in your home country. And when you update your home country will, it says, I revoke all former wills except my Spanish will dated X, so that they work together, because the cost of a will, which is negligible, having a Spanish will here basically will make life much easier and quicker and cheaper for your heirs to administer the property as and when you do pass on. But yeah, in the meantime, enjoy the property as much as you can.
Yeah, before we get to that point, no, I actually think it's fantastic advice.
Sorry,
do you know what?
It's the lawyer coming out of me.
No, I think it's great advice.
You've gone over to the dark side,
No, I think it's really important to consider these things. I think it's a great point. And everything that we've covered today has been really useful. Thank you so much for your time. It's just got me wanting to go and look at property websites. I'll have to control myself. But thanks so much for being a part of this conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cheers.